For many people, the COVID-19 pandemic has passed and is not given much thought or news coverage. Yet there's a growing number of people who have reported symptoms that have never left them. Many of them have had these symptoms for years. The Office of National Statistics estimates that over 2 million Britons have long COVID. You may have it, or you may know someone who is struggling with it. My name is Paul, and I've been debilitated by long COVID since January 22. In this podcast, I'm going to share my journey and things I've experienced along the way. My aim is not to give medical advice. I'm certainly not qualified to do that. But I've been gaslit, ridiculed and dismissed for my symptoms, and I know it can be a very lonely place to be. It's an invisible illness, and I just want people to know that they're not alone. Well, hello, and thank you for listening to this week's episode. My name's Paul. I'm the host of Life with Long COVID, and if we've not met before, I am the person with long COVID, and every week I share my experiences of what it is like to live with this condition. And I do so not because I like going on about myself. Well, I probably do, but it's really because I know that many of you suffer from long COVID, and it can be isolating and you can feel like you're on your own. I want people to know that other people are going through it as well. So this is a vulnerable, completely raw, honest account of what it is like to live with long COVID. Now, before I begin this week's episode, can you do me a favour? If you listen to the podcast through one of the usual channels, be that kind of Apple or Spotify or something like that, could you possibly rate and leave a review of the podcast, because it really helps get the word out there. It'll go into the algorithms of the podcast providers, and it'll be over. That means more people can find what we do. That would be awesome if you could do that. If that horrifies you, or the cognitive load of doing it, or leaves you with full of dread, don't worry about it. It's only if you can manage to do it. This episode is called "You're Too Young to Retire." And I decided to record this episode because it came out of a conversation I had with somebody who asked me what I did. And, back in the day, if somebody asked me what I did, I could tell them I was a vicar because that's what I did. Or whatever career I had before that. I always had an answer for this because that's what they're really asking, right? What do you do? What are you about? And now when people ask me, having retired now for the last couple of months, I've got no idea what to respond. So I've been trying a variety of things. One of the things I've tried is to say, well, I'm off sick. I'm too sick to work. I've got long COVID. And they'll say, oh, that sounds awful. How does it affect you? And then you have to tell them how it affects you, right? And you have to go, you can't be flippant with a response to that. So you end up saying, well, actually it affects me in a myriad of different ways. There's the cognitive difficulties, there's the energy, there's the mobility issues that it's left me with, and I go on. And by the time you've finished, they're all a bit glassy-eyed, they want to get away from you as quickly as possible. And just to top it off, I always end with, but of course, it affects different people in different ways. There's like 20 different elements to long COVID and counting, so nobody knows how it's going to affect them. And then they're just definitely gone. So I've stopped doing all that, as much as I can, because whilst I want to talk about my condition and what it's like to live with it, I also do not want to bore the pants off somebody, so I try not to do that. So recently I've been saying I'm retired because technically speaking, I am retired, but because of COVID, I took early retirement at the age of 52, which I consider to be very young for retirement, and it certainly is here in the UK. The only people who are usually able to retire at 52 here in the UK are people that have made a lot of money and, are looking to live in luxury for the rest of their lives. That is definitely not me. We're going to, my retirement has caused us and will cause us serious financial issues. So, I can't even play I retired early, I'm living in luxury card. So I said to this person, I'm retired. And of course they said, you look too young to retire. And, at which point I had to then go into my long explanation. And it got me thinking of how we convey this illness to other people. I spoke on the last episode about the importance of talking about our condition, but we've got to do it right in a way that is honest and a little bit vulnerable, but also in a way that doesn't require them to fall asleep. I'll still put them off asking you ever again. So if you've got any suggestions for that would be great, because I have no idea at the moment and I kind of dread the question. I think part of the problem is that long COVID has completely and utterly changed my life. And I'm betting if you're listening now and you've got long COVID, it's changed your life. You might not have had to give up work or have been in work anyway, but I'm betting that it's changed your life profoundly as it has mine. And actually, it further got me thinking that it's forced me to almost become a different person, or it's revealed more of the person, another side to me, which I didn't know existed. Before I gave up work, I was a massive doer, like I was a serial doer. As a vicar, I think I was good at my job as a vicar, but one of the reasons I was good is because I was always doing something. If there was a slight lull in the workload, I would be off planning something else, so I didn't relax much, particularly mentally. Mind was always on the tasks that needed to be done or the things that I could possibly do to make things even better. And that's how I lived my life. Even house stuff, I would say, right, I'm going to get this done, that done today. And when I sat down at the end of the day, I would only really sit down once I knew and I was satisfied that I'd done those things. Now, you may have called me a workaholic. I don't think I was a workaholic, although it's hard not to be a workaholic when you're running 3 parishes and all that entails. But I wasn't addicted to work. I guess what I was addicted to, though, was productivity. This sense that when I sat down at the end of the day, or the day, I had to feel like I'd achieved something that day. Do you know what I mean? I had to feel like I'd done something. Because I think if we really want to be vulnerable about this, and I'm going to be, I think that's where I put my worth. My worth was in what I produced and how much I'd done, not in who I am as a person. And statistically, I was reading only yesterday that people with long COVID are more likely to have had a busy profession or been one of those kind of people that just gets on and does stuff all the time. They're just busy doing stuff. So demanding jobs and a busy attitude means that when you get long COVID, you crash harder, which makes sense, right? Because it takes away pretty much all of the energy that you've got. So, and of course, when I hit that buffer of long COVID, I tried to work, I tried to be Mr. Paul doing for a long time before I eventually completely crashed out because my body just couldn't handle it. And now that I'm retired, I'm sitting here thinking, this thing has changed my life. I can no longer do much. Like I can record this podcast, I can do a bit of stuff around the house and do my writing, and I've really enjoyed getting back into writing. But is this, can I class that as, well, I can class that as producing something, but I don't want to get into any more measuring my self-worth through how much I produce. And that's been really hard. As I try to get through things the best way I can with whatever little energy I have, my mind is always going to, well, what can I do now that I'm not a vicar anymore? Maybe I'll recover enough and I could do something else. One of my default things before I became a vicar was I was going to be a teacher. So I keep thinking, well, maybe I could be a teacher. And then, of course, the realization comes crashing down that I haven't got the energy to control a classroom of children, of doing all that, of the demands that teaching brings. It's probably a more demanding job than being a vicar. So that is just not going to happen. And that's more my mind. I've got to change my mind and retrain my mind into this new way of life and not think of things as how much can I produce in a day? Because there are days when I don't actually do anything at all because I can't, like I'm on the sofa or whatever. I hope that kind of makes sense and kind of resonates with you in some way. But I can tell you that I've personally been through the being angry that I can't do stuff stage. I've been through the frustration stage, and obviously never lose you totally, but I've kind of got to the place now where I'm trying to think of life differently. I set myself tiny, achievable goals every day, even if it's just cuddling the dog who is currently snoring about 20 yards away from me in a deep sleep. And I consider cuddling him something to be achieved at the end of the day. And you know what? I've never practiced mindfulness before, but I have practiced thankfulness. And when you slow down, like we've been forced to do, you do start to notice the little things in life and realise that actually they're so much more important than anything I used to rush around for before. Family moments particularly I'm thinking of at the moment, where just conversations where I'm so much more mentally and emotionally present in those conversations than I was previously. I'm there, I'm listening, I'm engaged. And, it sounds like I never listened to my children or anybody else in my family. I did, obviously. I'm engaged before. But when your mind is really kind of rammed full of your responsibilities and the things that you've got to do tomorrow, and have you done the things you've got to do today, inevitably your attention is divided. My attention is no longer divided. It can be completely on one person. And the joy that I found is in those relationships, and really kind of, particularly with my children who are mostly grown up, the youngest one's a teen, but of getting to know them better, and sometimes getting to know things about them that I didn't know before. So there is goodness that can come out of this rubbish, awful situation that we find ourselves in. But I also realise that if you're in that frustrating, angry stage, or you're having a frustrating and angry day, as I still do, that's the last thing you want to hear. So I totally get it. You can say, shut up, Paul. Well, you can, but I won't hear you. But you know what I mean? I get it. You don't want someone patronising, saying, oh, it'll all get better, because we still have those days. We're always going to have those days when it's frustrating. But whatever you're going through, whatever stage you're at, my real hope is that you will at least find the odd moment when you can say, that wouldn't have happened before. I've been able to give my absolute attention to that person or that situation, and living in this moment, being thankful for those things, is possibly my new way to live from now on. I hope that for you. So, as we come to the end of this topic, I want to just say that if you are able to give anything financially towards the running of this podcast, there's a link in the show notes. There's a link to kind of subscribe for a few pounds or a few dollars a month, or you can buy me a coffee. There's a link there to buy me a coffee, and that would be fantastic. If that's not something you can do, forget what I just said. But there are also different ways to get in touch. I mentioned before about liking and reviewing the podcast, but there's also a Facebook page which seems to be getting quite a few people liking that, and therefore they'll get the updates. So if you're on Facebook, search with Life with Long COVID, you'll see the logo and like the page, and you can either message me through that, let me know how you're doing, because I really love to hear from you and how you feel about this topic and all the other topics that we have to deal with. And you can also keep up to date with when episodes are out. And I hope that in the end we can generate some kind of conversation around these topics as time goes on. And of course, if you have a suggestion for what you would like covered, let me know, because there's chances are this is going to be my experience as well. I reported last week that this post-COVID tiredness had overtaken me, and it is still there. Although I have to say, here in the United Kingdom, you'll know if you're also in the United Kingdom that the weather has changed and it's winter has finally come. I feel like last winter we didn't get very much cold weather, but all of a sudden we've got a snap of cold weather here where the temperature's into the minuses. And I've actually felt a bit of relief from those fatigue symptoms day to day. I'm not good with heat. I find it aggravates the long COVID a lot. So I don't know how you're feeling, but it's helped a bit that it's blooming freezing cold outside, even though I don't particularly like it. I'm being thankful for that. So so I'm having a slightly better week, but I'm hoping that will continue for at least another hour, another minute, another day. You know how it goes. I could just crash down at any moment. And therefore, I thought I would just record this beforehand. So, until the next episode, I hope your week is full of moments where you just feel thankful. And I really hope that even if you don't feel like you can do anything other than sit on the sofa, that you remember that you are enough and you deserve to be able to get a bit of a break, believe me, and that things will get better in time. And we'll see each other again on the next episode next Friday.